Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Edmonton Oilers trade deadline preview. We are pleased to be joined by the one and only Mason Boruch from Brock University. This is his second time appearing on the podcast, first time on the Bandwagon Hockey podcast. And we're pleased to have him with us to talk some Oilers. How you doing, Mason?
I'm doing great this afternoon. Thanks for asking.
Ryan, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to kind of dig into another team here, and we're getting close to the deadline, so we should see some exciting moves here soon.
We are getting close. It's February 17th as we record this. We were a little bit worried about the timeline, given actually, you know what, this can probably be our first topic. We're a bit worried about the timeline because there's been a lot of rumors the past few days between Kailer Yamamoto and Jesse Puljujärvi with waivers and injuries and the Oilers needing to make a move to clear some space. Mason, I don't know, maybe how touched in you are on the situation. I imagine you are very touched in on the situation. Do you want to maybe give a brief summary of what's been going on these last couple of days with the Oilers?
There's been a lot of trade circulation, especially around Erik Karlsson. They would reportedly made an introductory offer for Karlsson, but I think there's a lot of moving pieces that need to be figured out. One of the things is the Sharks want 3 first-round picks. There's problems with retention. There's lots of concerns which you can dive into a little bit later. But basically, the Oilers need to buy time, and to do that, to bring Kailer Yamamoto back in the lineup, they sent down Dylan Holloway and Vincent Desharnais, who are still on two-way entry-level deals. So no worries, through waivers there, and bring back Yamamoto and see how they look today.
So Yamamoto and Puljujärvi are both going to be in the lineup, or because I thought
Correct.
I saw that Puljujärvi had an injury.
No, they're both in the lineup. I mean, I've been on my phone for the last little bit, and I haven't seen any sort of game day lines for the Oilers the last hour or so. But Woodcroft yesterday confirmed that Yamamoto and Puljujärvi will be playing tonight. So the expectation is that they're both going to be in the lineup.
Yeah, so that was a new development today that I kind of saw anyways, because it was my understanding that I thought there was going to be I thought they were going to have to put Puljujärvi on waivers or make a trade to be able to activate Yamamoto. I didn't realize that they were going to be able to activate him just by sending a few players down. So that's good for them for the time being, I guess.
For sure. Buy some time, because there's definitely some they're looking at a bunch of different options right now, and Yamamoto is going to answer some questions if he's able to come back into a productive role. But if he doesn't, that kind of creates more questions and more options for the Oilers heading up into the deadline.
All right, let's get right into it. I was going to wait on Karlsson, but his name's already been dropped. I want an Oilers fan's thoughts on this situation. Let's ignore, maybe we can dissect the asking price of what San Jose is looking for in a minute, but I just want your thoughts on the potential of Erik Karlsson joining this year's Edmonton Oilers squad.
For sure. So I've created the good, the bad, and the ugly with Erik Karlsson. So let's go over the good. It's his career season. He's going to be he's on pace to be the first defenseman since Brian Leetch in 1992 to record 100 points as a defenseman. He's got 18 goals, 55 assists, 73 points in 56 games. He's got 2 Norris trophies, 4-time Norris Trophy finalists, 733 total points in 894 games, unreal skating ability and vision. I guess as Sens fans, you guys obviously know about the flip pass from the D-line to Hoffman in the playoffs. That's still fresh in my mind, at least. And that's when I think of vintage Erik Karlsson, that's the play that I think of. And he would fit immediately on the Oilers' blue line, exactly what they need in a puck-moving defenseman. Can fill in the power play one. But then there's the bad, which is he's had an injury history the last few years. The lack of offensive consistency over the last few years is partially due to the injuries. He hasn't played more than 70 games in a season since 2017, 2018. But this was also assuming that we're not including the COVID year or COVID years, I guess. But his production has also decreased. So since 2017-18 and before this season, he's averaged 0.67 points per game. down from his 0.91 points per game average between the 2011-2012 season and the 2018 season. So his production is down. Injuries is definitely a concern. And then the ugly is the contract. And he's 32 with a cap hit of $11.5 million. He'll have that cap hit through till 2026, 2027 when he's 37. So already, like, this seems like an immovable contract from the Sharks, but because of this resurgence from him, the Sharks have this opportunity to move him. So, like, the asking price from the Sharks is a 3 first-round equivalents. That's what's been reported. I think, why it makes sense is because he's the first D-man with over 100 points per season pace since Brian Beach, has an impressive individual resume, 1 goal away from leading his team to a cup finals. Again, sorry to maybe heart-wrench that a little bit from the Sens fans' perspective, but he's also a leader in the locker room and the league itself. So, and it's a long-term fit. Like, this isn't going to be a player that the Oilers are committing on as a rental. Like, this is going to be their defenseman on the blue line for the next 4 or 5 years. But why it doesn't make sense is its injury concerns, regression from his past point production, and his insanely high cap hit just doesn't work with how cap crunched the Oilers already are. So that's just kind of a perspective on what kind of, from an Oilers fan, and I guess from the Oilers perspective, what they would be looking at in terms of Erik Karlsson.
So, Mason, you referenced the cap hit, which obviously is a significant factor, arguably the most significant factor. And I believe you mentioned maybe in a group conversation that you saw San Jose is only willing to retain 18%.
That's what was been reported. I think that has changed. Originally, once Edmonton, I guess Erik Karlsson was kind of put on the trade block, that's what the Sharks were willing to do, is only 18%, which would bring his cap hit down to just over $9 million, which again is still ridiculous. So if they were only willing to retain 18%, I still think that contract's unmovable.
What number would you be more comfortable with seeing Edmonton take on? Like, regardless of what the price would be, like, it sounds like San Jose's initial ask is 3 first-round equivalents with no retention, which is not going to happen, unless the 3 first-round equivalents is even for the 18% retention, which I still don't think is realistic for them. What number would you be most comfortable with seeing Erik Karlsson in at the top end of the scale? Like, what's the most, in terms of cap hit, you'd be willing to see him join the Oilers?
I think the most is his 50% retained. Like, at $5.75 million, that makes the most sense.
Wait, hold on. Let me rephrase my question. What's the least amount of retention you'd be willing to see Erik Karlsson join the Edmonton? So, like, the highest end of his cap hit. So let's say, like,
oh geez.
Would you only take him at 50? Would you take him at 35 or
that? Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
So I'll base it off of 3 players from the Oilers that will have to be moved in order to fill him in. Jesse Puljujarvi, Warren Foegele, and Tyson Barrie. That's the at minimum whatever that salary is. So I think that's what I have. Puljujarvi and Foegele is $5.75 million. Add 4.5 for Barrie, which
that's over 10.
That's over 10. So I mean, like, at that point, you're already getting, like, if you even do 18% retention, like, that's okay. But the Oilers really like Barrie for whatever reason. The management and the locker room really appreciate his play style. He's gotten better defensively, but still, he's not the Erik Karlsson that is potentially going to be added. So I would like to see 50% retention, even if what could happen if the Sharks are still only willing to retain 18%, there could be a third team to levy the cap. But again, that would cost Edmonton a little bit too much. They'd have to get rid of like 4 first-round picks for someone to take like 50% of his contract, like the Coyotes or the Blackhawks.
Ryan, were you going to jump in there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, as specifically an Oilers fan, like, I've seen some back and forth online the last few days about whether Erik Karlsson is actually that much better or an upgrade on Tyson Barrie. If that were to be the case, Barrie's money moved out for an Erik Karlsson trade. Where do you stand on that? Because I feel like it's pretty clear that Erik Karlsson is an upgrade. It's just how much is that upgrade, not only just for this season, but going forward, just the last few years of his contract. Where do you stand on that?
I think it's a good point. I think a lot of what Tyson Barrie brings to the locker room is just chemistry. Unfortunately, he's a one-way player. Like, he's just an offensive defenseman. Like I said, he has improved defensively, but he's not where he needs to be. I think Karlsson still beats him defensively. I think Karlsson is clearly an upgrade. I would take Karlsson over all the Oilers D-men right now, even if Nurse had a decent contract.
I guess I'll rephrase it a little bit. Do you see the upgrade worth the cost at the moment?
Like, would you take EK at 11.5 or Barrie at 4.5?
I would take Barrie at 4.5 right now,
Okay.
just simply because the McDavid and Draisaitl's contract are going to be up before Karlsson's contract is up. So those guys are going to need to be paid, and we're also allocating give or take $20 million to Hyman, Nuge, Nurse, and Kane. Oh, I guess $25 million if you include Campbell too.
If Edmonton, sorry, this is just kind of like a random thought just after what you said. If Edmonton acquires Erik Karlsson, 4 years from now, for one season, if they retain McDavid and Draisaitl, they're likely going to have 3 players making more than $11.5 million.
Correct.
And 2 of them are going to be the 2 highest paid players in the league, likely.
Yeah.
That's absolutely bonkers to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's anyway, sorry, that was shocking. Okay, so just to pivot, I also saw, sort of on the Tyson Barrie topic, I saw that there was a debate about who people would prefer to give up in a trade between Tyson Barrie and Evan Bouchard, or was it between Bouchard and Broberg?
I'm not entirely sure, but if I'm the Sharks, I'm asking for one of Bouchard or Broberg.
For sure.
Just simply because of the youth aspect. I think Bouchard's probably the main piece they're looking back as the he might even be 1.5 equivalent to a first round pick. Just simply his analytics have looking really good. He played really well last season. I think his offensive production is limited because of Tyson Barrie being on PP1. I could see him being a 60-65 point defenseman if Barrie isn't in the picture. However, with Barrie in the picture and seem to be solidified in the picture, it limits Bouchard's playing time. So if he's got this much value, and since the Oilers are in like a win now mode, you might as well use him as a trade piece to see if you can get a star caliber player in Erik Karlsson.
So you'd rather see Edmonton hold on to Broberg then?
Just simply because he's a left shot over a right shot. Erik Karlsson is a right shot, so be a right shot for right shot replacement there. I don't want to see Bouchard gone. I want Barrie gone.
Well, yeah. So that's the thing. It worries me that the Oilers seem to be prioritizing keeping Tyson Barrie on the payroll, because Tyson Barrie and Erik Karlsson are redundant. Like, having those 2 guys on the same right side of a top 6 is completely just not necessary. But I kind of wanted to ask you, like, what have you seen from Broberg? Has he been good? Like, he's one of the most sort of fascinating prospects that I've kept my eye on the last few years, because honestly the main reason is because he was drafted ahead of Trevor Zegras, and I always thought it was super interesting that Zegras could have realistically been on the same team as McDavid and Draisaitl down the middle. So Ryan's reaction says it all there.
I'd never heard that out loud before, so that just kind of blew my mind a little bit.
But I also remember Broberg. I forget which World Juniors it was, but he might have even gotten injured, but he dominated for Team Sweden. At least I thought. Like, I was very impressed by him. So I've been sort of following him closely, but I haven't caught a ton of Oilers games. So what have you seen from him?
He over the last 20 games since he's been called up, he's been playing really well. I think he's got like 9 assists. I think half of them are primary. He's averaging about 15 to 16 minutes a night. But the Oilers are also playing 11 forwards, 7 defensemen. So they're trying to find the combinations that work, especially since Cody Ceci has taken a step back from his play since last season. So the 11-7 allows for a lot of movement in the defensive core, and Broberg has filled in nicely with Bouchard. He's helped CC's game. I see him being a lot more confident with his decisions in the defensive zone. I just think a little bit more time. I don't think he's quite there yet, but the one argument I have towards, I guess the Zegras falling right after Broberg definitely sucks as a hockey fan, but defensemen do take longer to develop than forwards do. So it's unfortunate that Zegras has been so good with the Ducks. But I think if the Oilers stick to the system, not only that, but stick with Woodcroft, because I think he's been a big impact with some of these young defensemen's development and gaining confidence, especially with Vincent Desharnais, who's been called up last couple weeks and made a big impact, which has kind of helped the Oilers' defensive depth problem. So with Broberg, it's one of those wait and see kind of players. I don't see Oilers moving on from him too quickly, since they do have I would say they would move Bouchard over Broberg just simply because Bouchard's shown he has the potential. I think Broberg would get less. So I think that's why they're more willing to retain and hold on to Broberg, because they have to kind of wait and see what it'll turn to be.
Okay. Ryan, you got something?
Yeah, are you done on EK? Because I kind of want to bring up another name.
I had one more question about EK.
Okay,
I just wanted to check with you first.
Yeah.
I'm blanking right now. Did you answer the question about what sort of the max cap hit you'd be willing to have Erik Karlsson at was?
Max cap hit, probably around $7 million. I think.
Oh, that's big retention then. Okay.
That's like $4.5 million retention. But again, I think his contract will be bad the last 2 years of that. But I think if Erik Karlsson continues to play how he is this season, it'll also give McDavid and Draisaitl a little bit more confidence with their playing abilities, because they rely on speed, like generating speed from the defensive zone into the offensive zone. They don't want to be carrying the puck. They want to be just going down the wing, or up the center. So it's tough when they have to carry the puck up and not have someone just ring it around the boards. So I think in terms of Karlsson, $7 million seems reasonable.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but I'd like to see him at just under 6 at 5.75.
So 50%.
50%. I think
what's your best trade offer for, say, 50% retained, since you seem to be a little bit set on that? What's your best trade offer? Ignoring a third party, just pretend San Jose's retaining 50% for 5 years.
Right. So 50% retention. I have the Oilers sending Puljujarvi, Warren Foegele, Evan Bouchard, and then 2023 first round pick, 2023 second round pick at Karlsson at 50% retained. I think that kind of meets the middle in terms of the Oilers not wanting to send 3 first round equivalents, but I think being 2 is good. I think Evan Bouchard is more than a first round equivalent. I see him as kind of like 1.5, pushing 2. So the fact that they get a 2023 first round pick, which will more likely be closer to an early second, and then a 2023 second round pick, which will more likely be an early third. And also Puljujarvi and Warren Foegele are used as cap dumps. Puljujarvi also is an intriguing asset in itself, looking for a fresh start. I think the Sharks are willing to take that chance on him, especially with how young and the team is after the Karlsson deal. Then Warren Foegele is just there for the cap dump. So Warren Foegele and Puljujarvi is equal to 5.75 exactly. So that's where the 50% retention would come in.
If San Jose counters and says they want the 2024 first instead of the 2023 second, so 2 firsts, but they'll take Barrie instead of Bouchard, would you do that?
Oh, I would do that 100%. Okay. I would do that. I don't think the Oilers need to have a first round pick for the next 3 seasons. I think this is the time to just get rid of them, put it towards someone that's going to help them raise the cup, so that at least McDavid and Draisaitl will have a chance at a cup in Edmonton before their contracts expire.
Do you think this happens? Or any trade?
For Karlsson, I'm going to say it's about a 50-50 chance. I think there's a lot of movement on it. I don't think Karlsson gets moved anywhere else except Edmonton. But at the same time, there's a lot of there's a lot of question marks. But again, the asking price is massive. And I don't know if the Sharks are willing to budge on it, but I also think that the Sharks might not have another opportunity to trade him if Karlsson goes back.
Yeah, they won't.
Last season. So
I think that is it Mike Greer? He needs to sort of, I think, maybe put his pride away a little bit and look at the opportunity he has to get rid of that contract. Because this time next year, EK could have like 16 points in 30 games and be injured for half the season, and then you're stuck.
He needs to realize this is a blessing. Like, it just like out of nowhere, just a completely resurgent season that you're actually going to get positive value back in a trade. Like any other season, or like any other outcome this season, and Erik Karlsson, you're paying to get rid of him while probably still retaining. Like, it was not a good situation for him there before this year.
He should do everything he can to, like, if it's deadline day, take your best offer. Don't pull the Bill Armstrong and wait and hold out for your best offer for a Jacob Chychrun, who is that maybe one we want to bring up next.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going next. We haven't really heard Chychrun linked, obviously not nearly as much as Karlsson to the Oilers, but I think me and Mitch are pretty much in agreement that would be the far better fit in almost any way over Karlsson. And considering their asking prices seem to be fairly similar, I would be curious to hear from an Oilers fan where you stand on that.
You know what? Like, I'm going to say this. I think Jacob Chychrun would be an excellent fit. But I don't think there's a chance that he's going to be an Edmonton Oiler. I really don't see that. I think the Oilers are looking to address the right side a little bit more than the left. I have a lot of trust in Nurse. I also think his play is inhibited by Cody Ceci. So if Cody Ceci's off his wing or off his pairing and gets put with Erik Karlsson, who knows what that potential would be. Then again, Jacob Chychrun's contract is so nice. He is one of those like game-changing defensemen that is able to move the puck up the ice and play defensively really, really well. He kind of reminds me of a better Jacob Slavin, but his contract is so good. I just think the asking price for him is still more than Karlsson simply because of his contract, and it has term. It's a lot easier to fit 4.5 than 11.5. And I think that's why Edmonton's kind of targeting Karlsson, because they see this opportunity as, here, we can solve this issue of Karlsson's ridiculous contract, and we're willing to kind of work to something with you guys. I think Jacob Chychrun is going to cost the Oilers 3 first-round equivalents, and they're not gonna budge on that just simply because of how good Chychrun's been. The one concern I have with Chychrun is his injuries the last couple of years. But when he's healthy, he's one of those game-changing defensemen that the Oilers definitely could utilize.
Who would you rather see join Edmonton by the deadline, Jacob Chychrun or Erik Karlsson at 50% retained?
Jacob Chychrun. I don't think there's any. I think Jacob Chychrun fills in nicely. Then again, I think the asking price is ridiculous. I think if they're looking at an Arizona defenseman, they're going to go after Shane Gostisbehere. I think the price is a lot less. He's got $4.5 million this season. He's kind of like the back burner if Karlsson doesn't pan out. He's found his game in Arizona, averaging 0.62 points per game since arriving there. And he'd be a rental, so I could definitely see like Puljujarvi first and maybe a 2023 third for Ghost at 33% retained, just to make the cap work. I could see Arizona being willing to do that, and the fact that Arizona got an asset for Gostisbehere to take on the contract, and they're going to get another asset trading him is, I don't think Arizona bats an eye, especially since they're looking at tanking for Bedard. So I could definitely see the Oilers looking more into Shane Gostisbehere than Chychrun out of Arizona.
Interesting. Edmonton's gonna be fascinating leading up to the deadline. I'm really excited to see what they do.
Because they have to do a big move, right? They just have to. You can't go without doing something, right? How do you feel about that, Mason? How would you feel if they well, they're not going to do nothing, obviously. What if they just did like a medium move to bring in some depth and nothing else? Like, what if they don't make a splash? How do you feel about that?
If they don't make a splash, I mean, define a splash. Are you talking like Erik Karlsson, Jacob Chikrin splash, like Tarasenko splash, or are you talking more of like a high quality rental in terms of maybe
I'm talking top 6, top 4 defenseman kind of quality player.
Right. I think right now on the Oilers' radar, other than the players mentioned, another guy that they've been looking at is Gavrikov, but his price is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he's same thing with Edmonton. I don't think they're in on Edmonton, but there's been like rumors that they've been linked to Edmonton, but the price is similar. I just think like the one thing that Ken Holland, I'll give him, he's patient. And I think heading into this season, that was one of the things that Oilers fans had to kind of like suffer through. Like Jack Campbell was atrocious at the beginning of the season, and then he changes his equipment for 2023, and he's I think 8-0-1 since changing his equipment.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not lost in regulation since changing his equipment.
That's the most volatile goalie I've ever seen.
You want to know a little fact? I drafted him in the first round of my fantasy draft this year. Went terribly, as you just described. So I ended up dropping him, and I picked him up again because I just needed a goalie, and he was still doing terribly, so I traded him away. And the second I traded him away, he goes 8-0-1. So that was fun. I've been keeping an eye on him very closely this year.
Oh, that's frustrating. Super frustrating. But I think like with Ken Holland, him being patient, like there's a lot of pressure like leading up to, I would say, December when Campbell was struggling. Stuart Skinner was finding his game at that point. Kane was injured. We're in the midst of a really tough opening schedule. If you take a look at our like first like 30 games, I think over 60 to 70% of those games are of teams who are in a playoff spot currently. So we had tough competition starting the year, and then we went since December. We've been 12-4-4 now, I think, with the loss in overtime or in the shootout on Wednesday. So. And that's against lesser competition. So, and the Oilers have 30. They've not won in the shootout. All of their wins are in regulation or overtime. So they're very efficient teams in terms of closing it out. So there's been concerns with them even making the playoffs. Personally, I don't have too much of a concern. The Pacific is really tight though. Like the top half of the Pacific, like you've got Vegas, Seattle, LA, and Edmonton. All at 55 games played, all within 4 points with one another, with Vegas at the top. So anything can happen in the last like half of the season. So you see Edmonton. I could see Edmonton winning. I could see Edmonton falling second in the Pacific Division. So I think like if the Oilers don't make a giant move like Erik Karlsson, I'm not too concerned. But I do think they have to do something to either address like I guess the puck moving defensemen, their offensive depth, or depth score or defensive defenseman kind of depth. I don't see them going after a goalie whatsoever, or like a top end scorer like Timo Meier or like a Patrick Kane. I think they're more going to stick to pulling their big assets on a defenseman rather than going for forward. And I think going into the last half of the season, I'm not super confident, but I have to be as an Oilers fan with Skinner and Campbell. And I think the team's playing. I think it also depends on the team and how comfortable they are playing in front of them. And I think they've played a lot. They've been playing a lot more confidently in front of Campbell the last 8 games since he's been in net than the previous, I guess, half of the season.
Okay, yeah, some good points there. Sorry, I just had a little interruption to the side. I kind of, unless Ryan, you have anything else like trade deadline related, I kind of want to maybe talk about this coming summer.
Yeah, I have one question off of that too, so you can go ahead and then we can wrap this up here.
Okay, so yeah, we're creeping up on half an hour, so maybe we'll keep you for maybe another 10 minutes.
Sounds
So Edmonton, so I'm just looking at their cap layout right now. As of now, they have 14 players signed at a cap hit of $70.8 million. Their only big money coming off the books, and it's not even big, is Jesse Puljujärvi at $3 million, and he's RFA, so they retain his rights. They've got Derek Ryan and Matthias Janmark coming off the books. Not really any defensemen. And then they've got their three guys that are on LTIR right now, which is about 700 million or 7 million in salary. 7 million in salary in LTIR, so that really doesn't affect their cap structure in terms of that coming off the books. But they have two fairly significant RFAs, and that's not even including Jesse Puljujärvi, who likely gets dealt anyway. In Evan Bouchard and I think Klim Kostin. He's got 9 goals this season. He's played really well for them in the bottom 6, from what I've heard and seen. How do you feel about those negotiations? What do you want to see happen there, especially given Edmonton's already tight cap situation for next season?
For sure. I'd like to see a bridge deal out of Bouchard. I think this season he hasn't played to what he has been like last season. And I think it's in his best interest to take a bridge deal. And I would take a bridge deal, either even a 1-year or a 2-year bridge deal would be beneficial. If they plan to keep Barrie, once Barrie's, let's say they sign Bouchard for like $3.5 million, give or take, maybe $4 million, whatever boost like Barrie, whenever his contract comes off the books, can be put towards, some of it can be put towards Evan Bouchard's contract. And I think that would be an idea. Klim Kostin, I don't see getting more than $2 million, even though he's done really well. He's had good luck in terms of shooting percentage. I think it's unsustainable. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he's kind of in and around $2 million. One guy I'm actually really curious to see what he'll get is Ryan McLeod. Ryan McLeod's he's had flashes of McDavid out there, and he's really good. Sometimes when he's on the ice, I have to double check his number to see if that's McDavid. He looks really good. I just don't think he has. I think he's got a few more years of just kind of grinding out in the bottom 6 before he's super effective. But he definitely could be a Charlie Coyle or a Nick Bonino fit on the third line. So I'd be curious to see what he gets. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets similar to what Yamamoto and Puljujärvi got, around 3 for this season. And then $3 million, assuming that Puljujärvi's gone, that could be put towards him. Another interesting point is the dead cap that the Oilers have. They'll have Andrej Sekera's buyout done after this season.
Oh, I missed those.
And then Milan Lucic retained salary will be done after this season as well, which gives us another about $2.2 million. So It'd be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. But we'll see. I think right now the priority, if we're going to keep Bouchard, is making sure that he's happy. So keeping him to a contract, whether that be a bridge deal, is probably going to be best, just simply because we don't have the money to give him a 5x5 or something like that.
So you think maybe a Noah Dobson 3x4, maybe 3x3.5 for Bouchard?
Something like that. I think that's fair and comparable, especially with Dobson's production.
Ryan McLeod would be interesting too, because he's missed some games, but over the course of a full season, if he were to be healthy, he'd be on pace for 20 goals.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's significant. So that'll be an interesting negotiation for sure. I missed that one.
So
Ryan?
Yeah, do they have all of their LTIR money coming off this year too? That's what it looks like, anyways. With Clefbaum, Smith, and Murray, all 3 of them are up this year too.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that, but that was just something I noticed as well. The other question I had was, he was sent down today, but what have you seen out of Dylan Holloway? Because I feel like I earlier in the season, I heard his name a lot in trade rumors, but not so much recently. It's more so Broberg or Bourgault in those rumors. What have you seen from him in the time that he's gotten up with the Oilers this year? And how would you feel about him as a potential trade chip as well?
I think he's one of. Let me just double check my notes here, but I'm pretty sure he's one of those pieces that the Oilers are unwilling to move. I think they really trust his play style. He's only, I think, 19, 20 years old. He's got one of the more unique skill sets that the Oilers kind of need, similar to kind of Zach Hyman. And I think what they're trying to find is they're trying to build three lines where they have an elite playmaker or someone who can play make and a scorer and a two-way forward that's good at back checking. And I think Holloway fills into that back checking role where he's able to move the puck up the ice really well. A lot of it's just, kind of dealing with it like a rookie. Like he's got to like find his way in the lineup. He's got to find his way on certain lines and find chemistry. And I don't think he's found that yet. And I think there's also a confidence issue. So going down to the minors, especially since he's averaging just under 10 minutes a night, I think he'll get like first line minutes in Bakersfield and be able to be productive and gain that confidence if he does come up again.
Yeah.
It's wild sort of looking at the young players that Edmonton has on their team, because like obviously they've got the big names, but then you look at the guys that they drafted in the late 2010s and early 2020s. You've got Holloway 14th overall 2020, Broberg 9th overall 2019, Evan Bouchard 10th overall 2018. And first of all, when I see that, it's surprising that they were picking that high in those years, given that they did have McDavid and Draisaitl winning Hart trophies and stuff. But it's kind of a shame that those guys haven't broken out yet now that they're coming into their early 20s. Like it'd be such a different story if those guys were maybe, again, it's still early, but maybe if one or even two of those guys really sort of hit really early in their careers, like by now, it would really change sort of the outlook of this team. But obviously there's still time with those guys, and I'm being a little bit pessimistic in terms of judging how a 21-year-old has played to date, but it's kind of wishful thinking.
But a prospect coming in on an an ELC is almost needed nowadays in the tight cap anyways.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got two guys making $21 million and then three other guys combining for 15, like you need those ELCs coming in. And I'm not saying that these guys that Edmonton drafted aren't going to break out. It just doesn't look like they're going to do it on those cheap entry-level contracts, which is unfortunate for them.
One thing that I'd also like to bring up is COVID. I think that stunted a lot of the development for these young players. I'll bring up one casualty that I bring up frequently, and that's Kaylor Yamamoto. If you look at his stats before like the COVID shutdown, he was a point per game playing with Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins. He's not found that since, and that's something that he definitely, if he had that, if Yamamoto had still been playing like he did before COVID, I don't think we'd have an issue with Yamamoto right now. But like he's barely an NHL forward right now in my eyes. And you take a look at some of these top guys like in the draft, like Byfield and Lafreniere, that are not necessarily like working out to the expectations that they had on them. But then again, they were drafted on the television screen. Like they had to put a hat on and a jersey on the television screen rather than going up and walking the the stage and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then they didn't have their junior year to prove themselves either. So like obviously I think you guys are stoked with Stützle at 3, but like if Lafreniere continued to play out his junior year that year, and same with Byfield, and be able to have an easier I guess production path, I could see them doing better than Stützle, which is what was supposed to happen, right? And but clearly there's an interruption with COVID. So
to your point too, Tim Stützle, he never stopped playing, and he was always playing with men over in Germany. So like that's a huge difference in development, right? Like you miss almost an entire year and you're playing with men. Like those are way different levels of development. So it's an interesting thing to bring up for sure.
For sure.
All right. I think that'll do it for this episode. Mason, do you want to take a minute and just tell us maybe some stuff you've been working on in the world of sports? Maybe tell us about yourself so that listeners can know a little bit about you.
Sure. So I'm not an Oilers fan living in Niagara Falls for no reason. I'm from Edmonton. I born and raised there, so love my Oilers. I currently work with an analytics company watching hockey and getting paid for it. So really excited about doing that. I track a lot of NHL games, so I watch a lot of hockey. And I've been really looking forward to the end of my. I'm a fourth-year student at Boruch University in sport management. Same program as Ryan. Met him through the Boruch Sport Management Council, so we worked on them there a couple of years. So finishing up my year, then going to see what happens the next year. Probably going to go back to maybe do a couple certifications in computer coding and seeing what I could do there. So really happy to be back on the podcast. Always fun with you guys, and thanks for having me back again.
Of course. Thanks for coming on and giving us so much time to talk Oilers. Ryan, hit that outro. So that'll do it for this Oilers edition of the trade deadline preview. It is February 17th. Hopefully this isn't outdated when it comes out.